Alrighty, good evening and thank you for tuning in to another session of the Forsaken Souls Dungeons & Dragons campaign. We are live at 8:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Before anything, I need to state that this game is rated T for teen for a general horrific theme for suggestive content. It's not suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. With that said, last we left off, we found our heroes lost deep within a mine. It is dark, and they're not quite sure where they're going or what they're looking for within. They make some torches out of some broken or rotted wood from the support beams of this mine, inadvertently setting the place on fire, and exploring deeper into the cave. It isn't terribly long before they run into a small grouping of goblins, laying in wait in a tunnel to ambush them. Fortunately, our heroes, with their keen eyes, managed to spot the ambush before it could take place, and overpowered these three goblins, leaving all but one fallen mortally wounded. The one left alive, given the name of Nephy or Gibbles, one of the two, was left knocked out on the floor without a weapon. Meanwhile, Bella, having her sanctuary somewhere further in the mine, was just leaving her newfound companions of Harris and Cole and Iktik, leaving with a gentle and polite goodbye, and moving down the tunnel when you were sure it was safe. You watched as a horde of goblins in some form of formation work their way down the tunnels. You wait, you watch, you let them go. And as soon as they pass, just as soon as they pass and before you can do anything, you heard a bell. You look around, swearing somebody must be there. You're fairly certain you knew who, but there was not a soul. Only a small silver bell on the floor. You took it and placed it in a bag of sand before descending from your tunnel to the floor and exploring further, trying to find your way out, back to your friends, back to safety. You did not find it. Instead, you found an entity that you released, a creature that bears your visage and countenance. It saw you plainly as you hid. You confronted it. It gave you no answers and it gave you no peace, and you traveled down an endless, infinite hall, lost in thought, lost in the dark. Meanwhile, where we ended last week, our remaining three, Ketud, Alastor, and Nephylia, came upon the form of a woman in cleric-like robes, standing amongst corpses of goblins and other humanoids. She's bloody, covered in dirt and sweat. She looks very tired and very angry. She glares at you, and Nephylia, you recognize this person. This is your mother. This is where we will begin. As you come up to this woman, as you see her plainly, as you recognize who she is, as she stands there amongst this pile of corpses, you hear her. She locks eyes with you, Nephylia, and she shouts, "You won't keep me from going back to him. I refuse to leave him and leave her alone, and I need initiative." From the three of you, all of you were there. Alright, first up, we have Ketud. Having faced this situation, not necessarily knowing who this person is, although I think you can notice the recognition in Nephilia's eyes. It doesn't look like it's trying to attack you yet. However, it hasn't had a chance to yet. It's holding a... Hang on. Let me pull up the description of this person once more. The description. One human woman stands alone, breathing heavy, tears running down her face, with a look of rage and sorrow. She's covered in blood, sweat, and dirt. Her clothes are white, red, and gold. Her robes bear the symbol of the temple, a stepped pyramid. She holds a staff in one hand and a black book in the other. Roll persuasion at disadvantage. You speak to her calmly and reassuringly. You're friends, not enemies. But you can still see the hate in her eyes. You're unsure if your words broke through to her. Next up, Nephylia. You know this person very well. You heard Ketud try to persuade this person to calm themselves and to not engage in any hostilities. What are you doing? You know that face plain as day. You saw it when you were very young. I'm going to need a persuasion at disadvantage. You approach and you look her in the eyes, and quizzically, Mom. But there's no sense of recognition within her. Not that you can tell, at any rate. Yes, gotcha. This entity is hostile to the party right now, so any persuasion attempts are at disadvantage. Is there anything else, Nephylia? Trying to persuade somebody would be your action. As I believe your words were, you kind of approach her, I think you would be closest to this person. Maybe about 10 feet away. I don't think you would go right up on her. I think Ketud would probably be the next closest. I think he would kind of be right next to you, and Alastor more towards the back. Alright. Alastor, you've just witnessed both of your newfound friends attempting to persuade this person to lay down their arms, to recognize that we are not your enemies. Yet, you don't recognize that their words have broken through. In addition, having gone through something similar yourself, not too terribly long ago, I think you can recognize that this situation might be deeper than what it appears. What are you doing right now? Alright, which spell are you holding and what's the trigger? Alrighty. Next up, this person. She looks at you plainly, Nephylia. You've walked up closer to it. She looks you in the eyes, and for a moment, you can see a flash in her eyes. It's like a yellow gleam, and there's a sickly grin. So you came back. The first time. You sent me here to die for you, and now you've come to do it yourself. And I need a dexterity saving throw, as there is a white flame that appears at the tip of her staff. Go ahead and roll your attack, Alastor. All right. Alastor? 21 hits. Roll your firebolt damage. Alright. Nephylia, as these words leave her lips and that white flame appears at the tip of her staff, you can feel at your feet a sort of warmth. It burns at you, and it slowly erupts around you as a white fire consumes you, dealing 5 points of radiant damage. Meanwhile, you watch as a bolt of fire whizzes over your shoulder and slams into your mother. It seemed to hurt her quite a lot. Ketud. It is indeed your turn. You've just witnessed, you've witnessed Nephylia. Recognize who this person is. You know who this is now. She called her mother. You watched as Alastor weighed his options and ultimately held in his hand a bolt of fire waiting for just the right moment. And then you saw this thing. Erupt fire around Nephylia. But it wasn't a regular fire. It was white. It felt holy in a way. The bolt of fire whizzed over Nephilia's shoulder. What are you doing right now? You haven't really used too terribly many of them, so I don't... Exactly, so I don't think you would necessarily know yet. Alright. And as a bolt of chaotic energy leaves your hand and heads towards this entity's back, this bolt strikes square between the shoulders, and a green light can be seen upon the other side from you, Nephylia, illuminating your mother. How hard did that bolt hit? Alright. Is there anything else you're doing? Yes, if you would have circled around from where you were, that would roughly be 10 feet. Nephylia, you've just witnessed both of your friends strike your mother, but your mother struck you as well, with fire and bolts of energy. And now what are you doing? You can always try to restrain a person. It will be a grapple check, and then I believe it's on the next turn where you can restrain. Alright, roll to hit. And how are you hitting? You strike out with your hand, knowing quite well where not to rightfully injure a person, where it should knock them out and not kill them. And landing your strike true, you manage to incapacitate your mother, as she had only one hit point left. And for the moment, we are out of initiative. Give me one moment. Alright, this area is filled with the corpses of many goblins. There are mounds of them everywhere. In addition, you also see the body of a well-armored dwarf who holds the hilt of a shattered sword. You see an immolated body too tall to be a goblin. It stands as though they were in the midst of casting a spell. The flesh is hot and beyond recognition. A dragonborn, in naught but tattered furs, lies cut in twain, her legs 12 feet away. You're searching for rope. Give me an investigation check. No. Alright. So you start searching around the bodies to see if you can find any amount of rope. I think first you would probably rule out the burned corpse. Anything that person had is long gone. And so then you would go over to the Dragonborn and see if she had anything at all on her. But save for her furs, she appears to be empty-handed. The dwarf, however, has a small rucksack just on his side. In it, you find a length of rope. I'd say it is about 30 feet. Okay. Give me a survival check just to see how well you do the knots. Alrighty. You tie them up. You're fairly confident in your skills. Nephylia, you've just fought your mother. What are you doing? Give me a religion check. You think for a moment, and you're not sure about every form of magic, but you know that paladins and clerics, their spells, they can be cast with components, but more often than not, they will generally have a sort of focus in the form of a holy symbol. And that will take the place of any physical components for casting a spell. I don't think you would know. Alastor, having just helped subdue this person, what are you doing? Alright, kind of looking over the knots. You give me a survival check to see if you know how good they are. You recognize that while the knots are adequate, they could be done much, much better. You take a look at the book. It is a solid black cover. There is nothing there. There are no cracks, no marks in the leather. It is as black as the shadows on the wall. You open the book. You open the book and you look inside. The pages are yellowed. They're very old. Some of them are crumbled. Others have holes where some insects or pests have eaten away. You look at the wording upon the pages, but you do not recognize the language that they are in. Something very peculiar, however, is that as you flip through, as you look at it, page after page, the letters are changing. Where at first they were written in dark black ink, they are growing lighter. Not lighter in color, but rather they are starting to glow. A soft purplish color. It's growing deeper and darker. And a mist starts to swirl off of the letters as you continue to flip the pages. Do you continue examining this book?
No, I walk over to Alastor. Marcus? He's gonna nod as they've done this before.
You flick a bolt of fire from your hand at this book, and it bursts into this black flame, and it burns brilliantly for a moment. The fire subsides, and the book is unharmed. Give me an Arcana check. You know that there are items, there are objects in every world that are infused with the very essence of the weave. You know they are powerful and they are not so easily destroyed. Having watched this book be engulfed in fire, and not just any fire, but one of pure darkness, you reasonably conclude that this must be one such object. You do not have a bag of holding. You do have a backpack, yes. They're synonymous, it's the same. Alright. Nephylia, I think as you're dealing with this book and having Alastor attempt to burn it, Ketud, what are you doing? I got you. I got you. It's nothing fancy. It's roughly yay big. Um, yeah, just a normal knapsack. Nothing magical about it. There was the rope inside. I think you would have found maybe a few loose pieces of lint here and there in it. All right. And Nephylia, you go over to this person to try and wake her up. Nephylia? It was it was more a question if you were going to try and do that or not. All right. All right. So you go over to this person who wears the face of your mother to try and wake them up, bring them to. I need a medicine check to try and bring them back. Knowing the nerve that you struck to bring them down, I think you are well acquainted with the methods at which to bring people back from such a state of unconsciousness. And so, having performed the necessary actions, which are too dreadful to describe. You bring this person back, and they are a little groggy at first, trying to hold their head, but they are tied up at the moment, shaking around, squinting, looking, unsure of their surroundings. She blinks a few times. She looks up at you. In her eyes you see nothing but contempt. She says not a word, but I need perception checks from the three of you. All right. The entity looks at you and says not a word. She looks down for a moment at the cave floor before bringing her face back up to you. Tears stream down her face. She gasps for a moment. She looks into your eyes. It's your fault. You're the reason I died here. I had to get stronger to impress him, to bring him back because you drove him away. But I was too weak. You made me weak, and I died here, without funeral rites, in the dark. My body was eaten by these things, as she gestures towards the corpses of the goblins. But you turned out so much stronger than me, didn't you? Because this time, it was you who murdered me. And she falls to the side. A dot is in her back. One of your dots that you gave to Bella. The body begins to smoke and smolder, and it rapidly decays into glowing ash that shifts like sand in the wind before forming into a staff on the ground, covered in the ropes that bound her. The staff... The staff is warm to the touch, blackened as if by fire, and the end of which is split and gnarled, like the roots of a mighty tree. You look at it in disbelief for a moment, but on the shaft you watch as a bright orange light forms and etches words into the shaft. Forever engraved into this staff, you drove him away. You can pick up the staff at any time. There is a dot lodged into the back of the staff, by the way. Yes. Investigation. No, Nephylia is doing That's alright. You start looking around, a little distraught with the current situation. You're a little distracted, and you don't notice anything new in this room, except for, I think, Ketud's got a fancy new rucksack. I was looking at current session chat. This is, yes, a quarterstaff. It's funny that you should mention Bella, because it is at this moment that you can notice there's a wall of stone to your right. It's been there this whole time, but it's starting to shift, fade, and becomes a wall of shadow, and from it comes Bella. Bella! Meanwhile, with Bella, the tunnel you are in is unending, and you walk in the dark alone. No friends, no companions, just you an unyielding silence, until it is broken by the sound of a small bell. It isn't long thereafter that echoes can be heard from the hall. They're far down and muffled, though familiar. It is difficult to understand what they are. As you continue down this hall, soon the cave walls yield from dark nothing to shadows dancing on the walls. Their figures dark as the void, their eyes glow soft and yellow. They grin at you as you pass them by. As you say this, the figures, their forms grow darker, black as the shade, black as the void. They come forth from the wall, manifesting themselves into this world properly. Their eyes glow brighter, and they are no taller than you. They slowly emerge from this wall, creeping out, never breaking their gaze. You hear a bell tolled loudly. Looking around, you stop and you think for a moment. That bell didn't come from this hole. It came from your bag. They hold several different forms. Some look like people, or rather, the traditional sense of a person, 4 limbs, a head and a torso. Some of them are small. They're orbs with faces and feet and hands. Some of them have horns, not dissimilar from a goat. Some of them have claws that reach out to you with sharp nails. Others of them seem to be nothing more than a severed hand. They're all very different, but each of them is emerging from this wall. You move away from the creatures, keeping pace though not running. I think you would notice, as they continue to emerge from the walls, finally freeing themselves from its bounds. You watch as they clump together, looking over your shoulder every once in a while to see if they're following, I think. And as they form this shadowy mass, they form an abomination of dark limbs, faces, and endless eyes. It parts in the middle, forming a gaping maw. Got you. Panicked, running for your life. You quickly leave, unwilling to risk your life with that abomination. You run through the endless dark, hearing this thing, a mournful cry behind you. It sounds closer. With every step you take, it sounds like it's getting closer, though you know you are moving faster than you ever have. It is not terribly long in your sprint until you hear something The sound of battle, perhaps? There are voices within, and they sound familiar to you, though you cannot pinpoint them. It is a straight path. You look over your shoulder. You look over your shoulder, back at this thing. And your ears did not deceive you. It is growing closer and closer, and with endless limbs, hands, and claws, it is reaching out towards you. You continue running down this endless hole. You're not necessarily following the sound. You're just trying to get away. Eventually, I think, when you're out of breath and can run no longer, you stop hearing the sounds. You look back and they are not there, but then the cave is not there either. There's nothing before you. There's nothing behind you. You are surrounded by darkness and void. You slow yourself, catch your breath, gather your surroundings. Before, there was still a sense that there was something here. In the distance you could see something. There was at the very least a mist. Here there is nothing. Give me a perception check. You look around. Is there anything here in this void of nothing? And you can see something. It's not far, maybe 60 feet away. You're not sure what it is. As you approach, you get a better look at this thing in the void. It is a serpent-like creature with a body and head of a snake, yet the wings of an eagle. Its fangs pass its jaws, its eyes narrow and slit like cat eyes. This serpent, it is no taller than you, although it hovers about a foot off the ground, making it seem roughly a foot taller than you. As well, I think, as you get closer, you would see that its scales, they are of a golden color, its feathers as white as snow, and its eyes green like emeralds, yet not one scale, not one feather gleams on this creature. It keeps its distance, gently flapping its wings. It gazes at you. You feel as though it is looking through you. There was nothing behind you. You watch as this creature raises its tail, and it coils about its own body, 4 times before a light flickers in the dark ahead. You can see nothing from it, not from here. As you walk towards that light, keeping an eye out to see if you can see what's through it. You grow closer and closer, and it is not but a blinding light. Until finally you see a stone wall that is shifting into shadow. And stepping through it, you see your friends. You see Alastor, Ketud, and you see Nephylia, who has a very nice new staff. Probably. Investigation. Looking around the corpses, I think you would look at the immolated corpse first and realize everything this person had is gone. It's been burned away. You would then look at the dwarf, and the most obvious thing is that's a very nice set of plate armor. Plate armor's very expensive. You check. Yes. I figured. I figured. Taking a look at these daggers, they are. As I go back to those daggers. No, you good. No, you good. They are simple daggers. They're not the best made, but they're far from the worst that you've seen. A little dull, but with a little time, they could be quite solid tools. They are just simple daggers. You check the dwarf to see if there was anything else on his body, and you can't find anything else at all. You... Yes, Alastor? Gotcha. So you move on to the next body, which I think would be the Dragonborn, and she has some very nice furs that are covering her body, which has been, again, torn asunder. You check to see if she might have had anything else, and your investigation... What was your investigation roll again? 18. With an 18, I think it wouldn't be immediately obvious, but you would notice sticking up through a small mound of goblins is a rather large club with a number of thorns growing out the side of this wooden monstrosity of a club.
No, I've got my good mom stuff. But thank you. Hey, while I'm thinking about it, do you still have those darts that I gave you? Yeah. When we got into the tunnel, I gave you darts. I mean, I wouldn't have any reason to. I guess I wouldn't really have any reason to think like otherwise. You disappeared and you came whole and black back. No, Bella came like with Alastor. Oh, you didn't? Oh, okay. I wanted to take one home. Let's focus on trying to find a way out now. That too. Oh my gosh. Can we? No, not yet. No.
All right. Yeah, I figured. So you go over to the dragonborn who's been torn asunder, and you take one of the furs. I think maybe some of the fur that's covering her arm. Uh, Dragonborn, they're pretty large, and this one is much larger than the norm. Very muscular, very well built. If you had to guess, they were probably a very angry individual. Um, Maybe about if the legs were still attached. 6'8" to 7 feet. Very large. Oh yes, just the arm alone is enough to cover you. You look back the way you came, and it looks unchanged. What dark area? That's a cave wall. It's push to talk. What area? That's just a cave wall. And you guys are heading deeper into the mines? Alright. As you begin to head deeper into the mines, I think the smell of the chamber you were in, the coppery tint of it, the decay of flesh, the general odor of goblins begins to fade rather quickly as you move away from that chamber. You move down, there's only one way from this battle chamber from whence you were, into this next tunnel, which branches off. It forks. You can go left, or you can go right. You do. It shows you the location of all of the rail tracks. No, not in this area. Yep. All right. Give me a survival with advantage to compare the two maps, because they're not. It's not a one-to-one thing. This is like a grid showing the minecart system, and you've got a map of the mines. So they're a little different. Survival with advantage. Yeah. Yes. You look at the map and you look at the chart. It takes you a second because, again, it's not a one-to-one thing. But lining it up to where you know there were minecarts, you recognize that this point on the minecart map lines up with what you know of the mines. It is that first hub chamber, which branched off in all of those different ways. You mean, have you seen any here? Gotcha. Gotcha. Taking a look at this and kind of comparing notes with Ketud, assuming Ketud is giving information. Okay. Kind of comparing notes and thinking for a moment. I think you would reasonably know that if you followed this line this way, it looks like this line kind of matches up in this general area. It was left. All right. As Bella, you go to pass the paper over towards Ketud, Alastor, you kind of reach out and take the paper. You take a look at the paper. And this is the railcart map, right? Yeah. Yes, a kind of runic language. Alastor, you don't know this language. How do you plan to interpret it? You speak Common and Abyssal, yes? It is not at all similar to anything you know. But with an intelligence check, I'll tell you what language it is. You don't know the language, and it is not similar to anything you speak, but you've seen it before. You've seen it in some cities that you've visited in your time, generally in dwarven cities. This is dwarvish. It is not at all similar to anything you know. All right, Ketud, you read the parchment. You take a look at it, and it is first and foremost a map of the rail system. It's almost like a subway map. It's very particular in its lines, but there are some notes and markings in the margins. They're in a runic language. It is a little faded. It's very old, and you don't know it at first, but very similar to every other time you've looked at a language you do not know. There's a pain in your head. It's worse every time. And you watch as those markings begin to dance on the margin. They glow a green flame and twist and writhe into the form of words that you can read plainly. At first, it appears to be nothing special. The heading of the map, it's just the title of the map. It is the mine rail system layout, draft 37, updated 43 days ago. It goes on. Next is the name of the foreman, and then a number of people who helped create the map. And then you start looking at the markings along the rail system. You know, here there's a marking saying a new iron ore deposit found. Over here, we think we might have found gold here. Further exploration. New expanse. Expand rail system here. But then you start to see some peculiar notes. Poison gas here. Goblin tunnel found. Goblins established stronghold. The end is not the end. Is not the end. The map wouldn't necessarily give you details on any traps in the mine. It again only explicitly shows the mine railcart paths. Yeah, I think. What's your intelligence score again? Okay. Then I think reasonably you can put together that probably in that area where this is written is where that gas would be. In fact, there is a main line that seems to stretch endlessly from one end of the map to the other. Yes. It's almost like, imagine a leaf, the veins that run through it. You have that main vein that runs, and then you've got branching veins that come off of it, and then veins that run off of those. It's very much like that. Yes. Yes. You can hear the faint sound of drums echo through the cave. And Nephylia? Alrighty. And hearing the faint sound of drums echoing through the caves, our band of heroes quickly begins running through the left tunnel. Or maybe not running, but moving quickly. It does seem to get a little louder as you move through. Give me a perception. It's going to be difficult because you're in a cave and sound echoes, making it hard to tell. You listen and you can hear the drums. They are growing louder, but they're coming from behind you, not before you. Alright. So you continue down this hall, the drums of the goblins behind you. It isn't long until you come to a point where this tunnel branches off. You have two tunnels that head off to the left, one straight into the wall, one at an angle, and one tunnel that goes off to the right in another angle. Give me an intelligence check. You take a look at the map, you take a look at this. You're not quite confident in that you can tell which one's going to take you to the main line. Yes, from the point you were to here, yes. Give me an intelligence check. They're getting louder as you stall. 13. You take a look at the map and you take a look at the tunnels. You're not 100% sure, but I think you're confident enough that the tunnel heading directly to your left would take you towards the main line. Alright. And so you do. You continue running into this tunnel directly towards your left. And it isn't terribly long until you burst through this tunnel into another, which branches straight to your left and your right. And there are a number of tunnels branching off of this one up and down the way that I think that Bella and Alastor can see without any issue. I think Nephylia and Ketud, you can see one or two a little ways out from your torchlight. It's not so much an enclosure. This is one long tunnel with many branching off. You can see a number of mine carts in here, many of them filled with some sort of stones. On the floor there are minecart tracks, or perhaps what once were. A lot of the boards holding them together are ancient and rotted away. You can see many loose stones on the floor. There are ancient support beams holding the mine up. Do you attack the support beams? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Alastor, roll for firebolt. So, the fire escapes from your palm like it has 100 times before, and strikes this ancient, rotting support beam that is supporting the tunnel from whence you just came. It shatters into shards, burning on the floor. And let me roll a percentile real quick, see if it catches. And you can watch as the flames spread across that first support beam. And it is burning quickly, as the wood is quite dry and dead. Okay. Roll to hit. The drums grow louder. That hits. Roll. Yeah, it doesn't need damage. It doesn't. It's ancient and rotted and dry, and it's fire. So again, you strike another support beam. It splinters and shatters into fiery kindling all over the floor. And this second one likewise catches fire, and it begins to spread and eat away rapidly. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so this fire, it burns hot, and it leaves your palm. It's larger, and it burns this blue flame, and it strikes this support beam, and it shatters it. It doesn't even bother burning. It's obliterated. I would like a percentile from you, Alastor. A D10 and a 10's 10. Cool. 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 I gotta figure this out. Ketud, Nephylia, do you guys still have your torches? Cool, so you don't have anything burning on you presently. Cool. I need my calculator. They might die. Okay. So you watch as that final support beam is obliterated. You can hear the cracks in the stone and the rocks begin to fall. And that tunnel, you can watch it from far in the darkness collapse, stone by stone, with great speed and force. The dust it kicks up rushes towards you. But it does not stop. And the stones above you have been loosened. And the wood is just as rotted in this main line. In addition, you can smell something. It is almost that of rotten eggs. And so rocks begin to fall around you. You give me dexterity saves at disadvantage. Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. Nephylia? Yep, dexterity saving at disadvantage, so the lowest number. Okay. And as the rocks begin to collapse around you, as that odor begins to fill the air, fortunately, nobody has anything burning around them right now. But it is a slight cause for concern, though the immediate issue is the giant boulders falling towards you. One of them immediately falls, and Ketud, you look up and you go to move, but unfortunately you're not fast enough and one strikes you. Bella, Alastor, Nephylia, your fates are much the same. Rocks fall, and everyone dies. Yeah. Yeah, you did. Very quickly. Give me one moment. You feel quite groggy, and you feel as though you're just waking up. You wake to find yourself in a dimly lit room with no clear light source. It's cold and smells of rot. The stone walls host lichen and moss growths, and a glistening appearance covers the exposed walls. The stone floor you lay on is cracked, cold as ice and dry. There's a passage against the southern wall. It leads directly to a spiral set of stairs. On the floor near the southern wall, there's a trap door made of dark wood and fastened with blackened steel. You sit up to find you've been laying with a number of bodies. There are 15, not counting yourself. As you count them, you notice 3 of them sit up. There's an air of familiarity to them, and you know them. They are your companions. You remember everything that has just happened, and for whatever reason you cannot feel as though that is right. You feel as though you should have forgotten. You feel as though you should be dead. You were in a mine. It collapsed. You died. And yet here you are, waking up, starting the cycle again. And this is where we will begin next week. Oh, not next week. I mean, there's always opportunity for the players to die, but I did not expect you guys to collapse the cave. Yeah, the map kind of gave you guys a clue that there is natural gas in the mine somewhere. Thank you. This is the only time that you know of that you remember, so you don't know. As a matter of fact, you do, surprisingly. That's the lure of the DM wanting my players to have fun. Alright, well played everybody for the combat and some very fantastic roleplay. That will be 200 experience points for everybody. And for everybody that's tuned in over the live stream or who has tuned in much later on, thank you very much for joining us for our adventure. I hope you have enjoyed. We will be live again, not next week, but the week following. We'll be skipping next week's game in observance of the holiday. Thank you very much for joining, and until next time, I wish you the best of luck.